The galaxy had grown silent in fear of the Vroth. They were not just an enemy. They were a storm of destruction that swept across star systems, leaving only ashes behind. Their ships were vast, their weapons unmatched, and their cruelty beyond measure. For decades, the Galactic Alliance had fought them. For decades, they had lost. The last stronghold of the Alliance was the world of Karvan, a planet of high mountains, silver skies, and wide oceans. Once it had been a place of beauty and trade. Now it was a fortress, a desperate final line. Entire fleets orbited above it, scarred and weakened. Soldiers filled the trenches on its surface, their armor patched, their eyes tired. Commanders met in dim chambers, speaking in low voices about retreat, surrender, or the simple reality that soon there would be no more battles left to fight. For the Vroth were coming. Everyone knew it. The silence before defeat on the outer edge of Karvan's orbit. Commander Taloran of the Vayari race stood at the viewport of his ship. His tall frame bent slightly as if weighed down by years of war. His once bright blue skin had dulled, and his golden eyes carried shadows. Around him, the bridge crew worked silently, monitoring sensors that showed what everyone already feared: the Vroth fleet gathering strength in the dark of space. "They will strike within days," whispered his second officer. "Perhaps hours," Taloran said nothing. What words could he offer? Every strategy had failed. Every hope had crumbled. The Alliance had thrown thousands of ships against the Vroth, and each time the enemy returned stronger. Even the most advanced species, those with weapons powered by stars and shields woven from quantum light, had fallen. Karvan was supposed to be the last bastion, the fortress where the Alliance would regroup and hold the line. But instead it had become a waiting place for doom. Whispers of despair across the planet's surface, soldiers gathered in trenches carved into stone and soil. Fires burned at night to keep the cold winds away. In one trench, a group of warriors from the insectoid Cathari race sharpened their blades, though they knew the steel would never pierce Vroth armor. Nearby, the reptilian Drask sat in silence, their scaled hands gripping plasma rifles that had overheated in the last battle. A young Cathari soldier broke the silence. Do you think someone will come?" An older Drask gave a heavy hiss. "No one is left to come. We are the last," no one argued. No one comforted. Because in their hearts they believed it too. The Council's last meeting, beneath the surface of Karvan, deep in a cavern turned into a command hall, the leaders of the surviving Alliance races gathered. The room was carved with glowing crystals, but even their light seemed dim. "The Vroth advance is unstoppable," said Admiral Vila of the Talari, her silver wings folded tight against her back. "We cannot face them in open battle again." Another leader, General Corvin of the Drask, slammed his clawed fist against the table. "Then what do you propose? Surrender? You know what happens to worlds that yield." A silence fell. Everyone knew. The Vroth did not spare the conquered. They erased them. Entire species had vanished into memory because of them. "We have no allies left," murmured Taloran. "We sent signals for help months ago. No response. We must accept the truth. This war is ending and not in our favor." The Council sat in grim silence. They did not notice the small flicker on the long-range scanners. A faint signal. A whisper from the void. A flicker of the unknown on the Alliance's largest orbital station. A tired technician named Rena adjusted her controls. She had spent weeks scanning empty space, a pointless duty when everyone knew the Vroth controlled every approach. But suddenly her screen flashed. A strange signal appeared, structured, deliberate, and unfamiliar. Her eyes widened. "Commander, I'm detecting something." The officer beside her frowned. "Vroth?" "No," she shook her head. "Not Vroth, it's different. It's coming from the edge of the system." Word spread quickly. Within hours, the Council received the report. "A new signal?" Admiral Vila repeated, eyes narrowing. "Another enemy? Or something else?" Taloran said quietly. For the first time in weeks, his voice carried a trace of curiosity instead of despair. Waiting for the storm. That night on the surface of Karvan, the soldiers looked to the sky. Above them, the stars shimmered like cold diamonds. The Vroth were out there, everyone knew it. But now whispers passed through the camps. Something else was out there too. A Drask soldier stared upward and muttered, "Perhaps it is nothing. Perhaps it is only a dying star." But another answered, "Or perhaps it is hope." For the first time in many nights, some soldiers allowed themselves to dream, though only faintly. Shadows on the horizon. The following day, the first shapes appeared. Small dots, distant but approaching. Not Vroth ships. They moved differently, and their design was unlike any known Alliance vessel. They were angular, rugged, and bristled with weapons. They did not glide with grace like the Talari ships, nor shimmer with energy like the Vayari cruisers. Instead, they moved with raw, practical strength, like predators cutting through the void. The council gathered once more. Unfamiliar design, Vila murmured, studying the images. Crude construction, almost primitive compared to Alliance standards. But armed, Corvin growled. Heavily armed, Taloran leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. Transmit a signal. Let us see if they answer. The first reply when the transmission went out, there was silence at first. The approaching fleet did not change course, nor did they retreat. Minutes stretched into long, anxious hours. Every soldier on Carvan watched the skies, every commander held their breath. Then, at last, a voice came through the speakers. It was deep, clear, and carried a tone none of the Alliance had heard in years. Confidence. "This is the United Earth Fleet," the voice said. "We have received your signal. We are here to help." The council froze. Unknown words. Unknown species. But behind the voice was something undeniable. Resolve. Taloran whispered, almost to himself. Humanity. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to believe. The galaxy waited. The turning point had arrived, but the final battle was yet to come. The Krith Dominion, shaken by repeated defeats and the spreading resistance, prepared their greatest fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was sent to crush the human-led forces once and for all. They believed their victory was inevitable, but they had underestimated the strength of humanity and the unity it had inspired across the stars. On Earth, Marcus Hale stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Dots of light represented human and allied forces, small yet determined against the vast expanse of Krith warships. The council gathered, each member tense but resolute. "This is the moment," Marcus said. "We cannot hide. We cannot delay. Every ally, every fleet, every soldier is ready." The Krith believe fear controls the galaxy, but hope moves faster than fear. Today we show them the true power of humanity. Brannak, the Grovak warlord, slammed his massive fist on the table. "Let them come. Let them see that the galaxy refuses to bow." Saris of the Elthari nodded. "Our fleets are ready. Our people are ready. Humanity has taught us how to fight with both strategy and courage. This is our moment to act together." The first engagement took place above the burning world of Velos. Once a conquered planet, now a symbol of resistance, it had been rebuilt by human and allied forces. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Fleets waited in shadow, ready to strike. Captain Elena Ward led the first wave. Her human ships moved with precision, weaving through asteroid belts and debris fields to approach the Krith fleet undetected. Pilots from every allied race followed, their movements synchronized as if guided by one mind. The Krith, confident in their overwhelming numbers, opened fire the moment they saw the first ships. But humans did not charge directly. Instead, they divided, attacking weak points, sabotaging weapon systems, and striking supply lines. Explosions lit the darkness of space, but only where humans intended. On the surface, human soldiers led ground operations. Krith patrols had expected fear. They had expected retreat. Instead, they found fierce resistance. Humans and allied forces fought with unity, using clever tactics and terrain to their advantage. In the deserts of Carol, human-led squads set traps and ambushes, drawing Krith patrols into zones where allies waited. Every movement was calculated, every attack coordinated. Krith soldiers, skilled and ruthless, were shocked by the level of precision and strategy. Children and civilians who had once hidden were now part of the effort, relaying messages, repairing equipment, and boosting morale. Every small action contributed to the larger fight. The Krith flagship, a massive vessel that had crushed entire fleets, moved to engage the humans directly. Its weapons fired with deadly speed, tearing through space, but human engineers had anticipated this. Cloaked mines, holographic decoys, and agile fighters moved in perfect coordination to neutralize the threat. Captain Ward led a daring strike team directly to the flagship. Using small, fast ships, they infiltrated its defenses, disabling critical systems. The crew of the Krith flagship, unaccustomed to being challenged so closely, struggled to respond. Explosions rocked the interior and the massive ship began to falter. On the battlefield, human leadership shone. Unlike other races, humans did not rely only on brute strength or advanced technology. They relied on creativity, adaptability, and the spirit of unity. Where allies hesitated, humans led. Where fear might have paralyzed others, humans inspired action. Marcus Hale communicated directly with fleet commanders, adjusting strategies in real time. Focus on the supply lines. Protect the civilians. Do not waste ships unnecessarily. Every strike must count. Brannock and Saris followed the guidance willingly, trusting humanity's instincts. Lyra of the Silrai monitored the enemy's sensors, providing intelligence that turned every Krith maneuver into an opportunity. Together, humans and their allies were more than a force. They were a single, intelligent, coordinated storm. Across the galaxy, resistance cells moved in coordination with the main fleets. On the mining moon of Talros, workers sabotaged Krith equipment. On Keral, engineers disabled enemy communications. On Velos, children and civilians supported every action with courage and ingenuity. Each act, no matter how small, amplified the impact of the main battle. The Krith had expected fear, chaos, and retreat. They found courage, order, and unity, and it was disorienting. Their attacks became confused. Their strategies faltered. They had never fought an enemy who could turn every small setback into a victory, who could transform every challenge into opportunity. The final confrontation came when the Krith flagship attempted to escape the battlefield, hoping to regroup and strike elsewhere. Human ships blocked its path. Captain Ward, leading the fastest strike force, closed in. Using a combination of cunning and technology, they disabled its engines. Brannock's Grovak warriors boarded the ship. Saris and her Althari allies disabled weapon systems. Lyra guided the operation with precision, ensuring the Krith could not recover. Within hours, the flagship was neutralized, its crew captured. With their greatest weapon gone, the Krith fleet fell into disarray. Ships retreated, systems surrendered, and entire planets sent messages of allegiance to the human-led alliance. Humanity's tactics, courage, and unity had shown the galaxy that no force, however ancient or powerful, could dominate when hope and determination were strong. On the battlefield, human pilots cheered. On the surface, soldiers and civilians embraced. Everywhere, the message was clear. The Krith were defeated, not just by weapons, but by the will of those who refused to surrender. In the aftermath, the Allied leaders gathered to address the galaxy. Marcus Hale spoke first. The Krith believed they could rule through fear. They underestimated the courage of humanity and the unity we have inspired across the galaxy. Today we show that no empire, no matter how powerful, can crush hope when people choose to stand together. Brannock growled with satisfaction. We fought hard. We survived, and we learned that together, we are unstoppable. Saris nodded, adding, Humanity has taught us that strength is not measured by size or technology alone, but by heart, courage, and unity. Lyra of the Silrai, usually quiet, spoke to the gathered crowd of leaders. We now know that even the smallest spark can grow into a fire that changes the course of history. Humanity has reminded us all that hope is the greatest weapon we can wield. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Planets once conquered celebrated liberation. Hidden colonies emerged from secrecy, joining the alliance. Refugees returned to their homes. Children drew symbols of hope on walls. Ordinary people became heroes in their own lives. The Krith dominion had been shattered. Not merely defeated, but shown the strength of the galaxy united under the courage of humanity. And in the quiet moments after the battle, Marcus Hale reflected on what had been accomplished. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries. They were small, young, and untested. Yet through courage, ingenuity, and unity, they had risen to become the defenders of hope. The galaxy had survived. And for the first time, it looked to humanity not just as another species, but as a symbol, a beacon of power, spirit, and determination. As fleets returned to their worlds and the stars slowly quieted after the storm, one truth remained clear. The Krith could no longer dominate. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. Humanity's power was not in weapons alone. It was in their courage, their unity, and their refusal to surrender. And as long as they stood, hope would never die. The war was over. But the story of humanity, The spark that lit the galaxy would endure forever. The Krith Dominion had underestimated the humans. For centuries they had crushed resistance before it could grow. Entire fleets, entire civilizations had fallen under their shadow. Yet in the far reaches of space, the sparks of human-led resistance had become more than whispers. They had grown into a force to be reckoned with. The Krith noticed the shift first in small skirmishes. Their patrols were ambushed, supply lines disrupted, communication networks hacked. At first they wrote it off as random acts of rebellion, but when patterns emerged, they began to realize the humans were doing more than fighting. They were teaching others to fight as well. On the star system of Sindara, a key hub for Krith supplies, human strategy was in full display. Captain Elena Ward, leading a joint human and allied fleet, had studied the system for weeks. The Krith had heavily fortified it, expecting no resistance. Yet her plan relied not on brute force but on careful precision. She gave orders calmly. Lure them into the outer ring. Let them think they control the fight. Then we strike where they least expect it. Her team of pilots and engineers nodded, ready to turn strategy into action. The first wave of human fighters moved into the shadow of the asteroid belt. They were fast, almost invisible against the dark rocks. Krith sensors scanned endlessly, yet could not detect the small, clever ships. When the Krith fleet moved to intercept, it fell straight into the trap. Explosions erupted among supply freighters and warships, sending shuttles and Krith soldiers scrambling. The Allies, guided by humans, executed the plan with precise timing. Engineers on board disabled weapon systems with minimal destruction, ensuring that no lives were lost unnecessarily. Within hours, the Sindara system, once a symbol of Krith power, had been crippled. Back on Earth, the Human Council watched the reports with quiet satisfaction. Marcus Hale stood, hands clasped, as data from the battlefield streamed in. "This is what we hoped for," he said. "Not just victory, but an example. Let the galaxy see what we can do. Let them know they can fight." The other council members nodded. While humans had led the attack, every success belonged to the Allies as well. Each race had contributed its own strengths, creating a united front stronger than any single species could be alone. Even Ceres of the Althari, who had been skeptical at first, admitted, "I did not believe they could do this. But humans have taught us that courage and cunning can change the course of a battle faster than fleets of ships ever could." The Krith response was swift. Their admirals gathered in the capital of the Dominion, discussing the threat with anger and disbelief. "They are small," one barked. "They should be insignificant." "Yet they are not," another replied. "They strike with precision. They vanish before we can retaliate. Their allies follow their lead. Entire systems have risen against us. This is dangerous." The Krith began to send more ships, more patrols, more weapons. But every increase in force met with human ingenuity. On the mining world of Talros, humans and their allies had rigged the terrain with clever traps, funneling Krith forces into zones where retreat was impossible. On the forest moon of Yalora, small groups of humans led guerrilla operations that disrupted enemy patrols without ever engaging in a full battle. It was as if the Krith were learning a new kind of war, one they were unprepared for. In the council chambers on Earth, Marcus addressed the Allied leaders. "The enemy grows stronger in response to our actions. That is natural. But we have already seen proof they are not invincible. Systems that were thought lost have risen. Entire fleets now follow our lead. The turning point is here. We must guide it, not just wait for it." Branach, the Grovak warlord, slammed a fist on the table. "We have tasted victory for the first time in years. The Krith can be beaten if we strike together. Do not let this moment pass." Lyra of the Silrai added softly, "The galaxy sees that resistance is possible. More will join if we act wisely. The fire is spreading. That fire spread quickly." Across hidden worlds, colonies began to rise. Humans trained Allied forces not only in combat but in strategy and innovation. They shared their methods, showing that even the smallest fleet or the tiniest team could achieve great results with clever tactics. On Keral, the desert world, engineers who had once cowered from Krith patrols now built defensive networks and communication arrays that allowed resistance groups to coordinate across vast distances. On Velos, children and young adults studied the lessons left by humans, learning skills of survival and strategy. Every strike, every victory, every teaching session turned ordinary people into leaders. And soon these leaders guided entire populations in coordinated efforts. What had started as sparks became flames. The Krith realized their control was slipping. Reports of destroyed convoys, sabotaged systems, and escaped prisoners reached the highest levels of command. Entire sectors once thought loyal were questioning Krith rule. Fear had been their greatest weapon, but humans and their allies were showing that hope could be stronger than fear. A Krith admiral spoke angrily in the capital chamber. If we cannot break their spirit, then all our power is useless. Their allies follow them blindly, inspired by their courage. They have turned resistance into a weapon against us. The Dominion tried to respond with intimidation, threatening worlds, crushing small fleets, but the effect was the opposite. Humanity had taught the galaxy to resist. Every act of oppression became a rallying point. Every challenge became an opportunity for courage. Captain Elena Ward and her team returned from a reconnaissance mission over a captured Krith outpost. They had gathered intelligence, rescued prisoners, and disabled weapon systems. When she reported to the council, her words were simple but full of meaning. The enemy is strong, she said, but they are no longer untouchable. Every act of resistance reminds them that they are not gods. And every world we save reminds the galaxy that we are not alone. The Allied leaders nodded in agreement. Branagh growled, "We must strike while the Krith hesitate. Every second they wait is another chance for the galaxy to rise." Marcus Hale addressed the council and the assembled allies, his voice clear and steady. "We have turned the first spark into a growing fire. The Dominion has felt it. They have seen that humanity, combined with the will of the galaxy, cannot be crushed. Now we guide the turning point. Every choice we make, every strike we plan, shapes the path to victory, and we will not fail." The galaxy watched. Systems once silent began to transmit messages of hope and courage. Refugees returned to their homes carrying stories of human-led victories. Hidden colonies emerged from secrecy, joining the fight. Ordinary people who had once bowed in fear now took up arms, not just in battle but in spirit, teaching their neighbors to resist, to endure, to fight for freedom. Even small victories mattered. A destroyed Krith patrol here, a successful defense of a colony there. They all added to the momentum. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the war was not hopeless, and that ordinary people could change the outcome if they acted together. By the end of the campaign, the Krith began to hesitate. They had faced centuries of obedience and fear, yet humans had reminded the galaxy, and the Dominion itself, that power alone was not enough. Courage, unity, and hope could turn the tide, and in this moment the galaxy understood. The turning point had arrived. Humanity was no longer just a spark in the dark. It was a beacon, guiding others to rise, to resist, and to reclaim what was theirs. The war was far from over, but the Krith had seen for the first time that they could be challenged. And the galaxy, once silent and fearful, was beginning to roar with renewed strength. The fire of resistance was growing. Humanity had lit it. The Krith Dominion ruled the stars with terror. They did not expect anyone to rise again. In their minds, the galaxy was already theirs. Entire fleets had been broken. Entire worlds had fallen silent. To the Krith, resistance was a dead dream. But in the dark corners of space, something new was forming. Humanity and its allies had begun to gather, slowly but with determination. They were not strong enough yet to face the Krith in open battle, but they knew a different way. They would strike not with size but with speed, not with fear but with fire. The first sparks began on the world of Danar. Once it had been a busy trading hub, filled with merchants from a dozen races. Now it was under the boots of Krith soldiers, who patrolled its streets with heavy weapons. Its people were forced into silence, afraid to resist. That silence ended when a small human ship slipped into orbit, cloaked by the shadows of broken satellites. On board were only 20 soldiers, humans and aliens who had sworn to fight together. Their mission was not to win a great battle. Their mission was to ignite hope. The leader of the group was Captain Elena Ward, a human with sharp eyes and steady hands. She spoke to her team before the drop. "We are not here to defeat the Krith. We are here to remind the galaxy that they can be hurt. If we strike hard and vanish, the people will remember that the Dominion is not unbreakable." The team landed in the ruins outside the city. They moved with care, blending shadows with silence. Soon the strike began. Explosions shattered Krith supply depots. Weapons were stolen and redistributed to the local people. Communication towers were hacked, and instead of Krith orders, a single message spread across the city. The fight is not over. The resistance has begun. By the time Krith reinforcements arrived, the team was gone, disappearing into the stars. But the message remained. For the first time in years, the people of Danar lifted their heads and whispered the same word: hope. News traveled faster than ships. Stories of the raid on Danar spread across secret channels, carried by smugglers and traders. Many could not believe it. How could such a small group strike the mighty Krith? Yet the proof was real. Destroyed depots, stolen weapons, hacked towers. On other worlds, sparks followed. A Grovak squad, trained by humans, ambushed a Krith convoy on the frozen plains of Ulthar. They did not keep the weapons for themselves. They gave them to miners who had lived in fear for years. On the desert world of Carol, a band of Silrai engineers planted traps along a Krith patrol route. Small, clever devices, nothing powerful, yet they caused panic when patrols vanished without trace. Each act was small. Each act seemed meaningless compared to the size of the Dominion. But together they became something greater. They became a story. The story of resistance. The Krith commanders grew restless. They were used to enemies who fought large battles, who stood in open fields where their overwhelming fleets could crush them. But this was different. The humans and their allies did not fight as expected. They struck from shadows, vanished into silence, and left only whispers behind. One Krith admiral snarled during a council, "They are insects. They cannot defeat us." Another commander answered, "Perhaps not. But insects can bite, and their bites spread fear." For the first time, the Dominion realized they faced something new. An enemy not of strength, but of spirit. On Earth, the Council watched the reports come in. Captain Ward stood before them, her uniform scorched from battles fought in secret. She did not boast of victories. Instead, she spoke plainly. "We cannot win this war by standing still. We must teach the galaxy to believe again. Every raid, every strike, every message, we must show that the Krith are not gods. They bleed like any other." The Council agreed. They ordered more missions, more sparks across the stars. Ships were built not as giants of war, but as fast hunters, designed to slip past patrols and strike where least expected. The allies joined eagerly. Brannak, the Grovak warlord, sent warriors who lived for such daring raids. Lyra of the Silrai shared devices that could confuse enemy sensors. Saris of the Althari, though cautious, provided diplomats to carry the message of resistance to hidden colonies. Slowly, the galaxy began to stir. Among ordinary people, change was felt. On the mining moon of Talros, workers once bowed their heads when Krith patrols marched by. After hearing of Danar, they no longer lowered their eyes. They began to pass secret messages, waiting for the day they could rise. On the shattered world of Velos, where once all hope had died, children began to draw symbols of resistance on the walls, simple marks of fire copied from human stories. Even in ruin, they found the courage to dream again. In every corner of the galaxy, the message spread. The humans fight, and we can fight too. The Krith tried to crush this spirit. They increased patrols. They punished entire cities when a single act of resistance was found. They thought fear would silence the flames, but they did not understand humanity. When the Krith destroyed a town, humans rebuilt it. When they hunted a resistance cell, 2 more appeared. Every loss became a story. Every tragedy became fuel. Humans carried these stories across the stars, turning pain into strength. Other races began to follow the same path. They learned from humanity not just tactics, but a way of thinking. Never surrender, never bow, never stop. One evening, as the human council gathered, Lyra of the Silrai spoke. Her voice was soft, but every word was clear. "I have watched you closely," she said. "I have studied how you fight, not only with weapons, but with heart. My people once believed knowledge alone was power, but you show us another truth. Hope is a weapon too, and in your hands it is sharper than any blade." Marcus Hale, the human leader, answered simply, "Hope is not ours alone. It belongs to all who refuse to kneel. Together we will turn sparks into fire, and fire into a storm the Krith cannot control." The galaxy began to believe again. Small victories became larger. Small sparks became brighter. Where once the Dominion walked unchallenged, now they looked over their shoulders. They felt unease for the first time in centuries. The war was far from over. The Krith were still vast, still powerful, still merciless, but they had lost one thing they thought secure: fear as their weapon. For in the silence of broken worlds, in the hearts of scattered peoples, in the courage of humanity and its allies, a single truth had returned. The fight was not over. The resistance had begun. The galaxy had grown used to silence. Once the stars had been filled with chatter, trade calls, diplomatic messages, and fleets moving proudly across space. Now most of that was gone. The Krith Dominion ruled many systems, and the rest lived in fear. It seemed the story of every world was the same: resistance, defeat, surrender. But not everyone had surrendered. Rumors began to travel, carried by refugees who found shelter in hidden colonies or uncharted stations. They spoke of humans, those strange newcomers from a blue planet called Earth. According to whispers, they had not bent the knee. Instead, they were preparing for war. At first, few believed the stories. Humans were too small, too new, too untested. Yet the whispers refused to fade. Eventually, the Council of Remaining Free Races decided they could not ignore them. If there was even a chance the rumors were true, they had to see for themselves. Thus, a group of leaders boarded an old diplomatic vessel and set a course for Earth. The journey was heavy with doubt. The Althari ambassador Saris spoke often of caution. Her people had once commanded fleets of silver starships that glowed like moonlight, but now she traveled with only a single guard. "Humans are brave, yes," she said softly, "but bravery alone cannot stop the Krith." The Grovak warlord Brannock disagreed. His people were large, with bodies built for battle. He carried scars across his scaled face. "If they fight, I will fight with them," he growled. "If they hide, then we are truly lost." The Silrai envoy, slender and quiet, said little. Her name was Lyra, and her people valued knowledge above all else. She spent the voyage studying every human record she could find: old transmissions, scientific logs, even fragments of their history. What she read left her thoughtful. "They have faced extinction many times," she whispered to herself, "and always they endured." When the vessel finally reached Earth, the leaders expected to see a planet full of fear, perhaps begging for protection. Instead, they found order and preparation. Orbital stations circled Earth like silent guardians. Shipyards were busy, their arms extending outward as new vessels took shape. Training fields echoed with the voices of soldiers learning discipline. It was not the sight of a people waiting to die. It was the sight of a people sharpening themselves for battle. The visitors were brought to a great hall in the capital city. There, they met Earth's council, leaders chosen from across nations, speaking not with division but with unity. The humans welcomed their guests with respect, but also with steady eyes that did not show fear. Saris was the first to speak. "We have come seeking truth. The galaxy believes you prepare to fight the Krith. Is this rumor real?" A human leader, an older man named Marcus Hale, stood. His voice was calm but carried weight. "It is real. We have watched the Krith burn your worlds. We have heard the cries of the refugees. We know that if they are not stopped, we will be next. Humanity does not wait for the fire to reach our home. We will meet it head on." Brannock let out a rumbling laugh. "Good. At last someone with spirit." But Saris shook her head. "Your fleet is small. Your colonies are few. You cannot stand against the Krith alone." Marcus answered without hesitation. "We will not stand alone. We will stand with anyone willing to fight. What we lack in numbers, we will answer with resolve. Where others see fear, we will carry hope. That is the strength of humanity." The aliens spent days on Earth watching, listening, testing. They visited academies where young pilots trained not only in machines but also in strategies of deception and adaptation. They saw engineers creating weapons not of overwhelming power but of clever design, devices that used resources in unexpected ways. What struck them most was the spirit of ordinary humans. In streets, in schools, in workshops, there was no sign of surrender. Farmers spoke of feeding armies. Artists painted visions of victory. Children sang songs of courage. Humanity was preparing as one. Lyra, the Silrai, finally broke her silence. "I begin to understand," she said one evening as she walked among human scientists. "The Krith fight with fear. But humans fight with memory. You have suffered before, yet you rise again and again." Marcus nodded. "We are not the oldest race. We are not the strongest. But when we fall, we learn, and when we rise higher." When the council of visitors met once more, their voices were divided. Saris feared that joining humanity would invite destruction sooner. If we gather, the Krith will see us as a threat and strike harder, she warned. Brannock slammed his fist upon the table. They already strike harder. They already destroy. Hiding changes nothing. Better to fight beside those who do not fear death. Lyra turned her eyes to both of them. The question is not whether humanity can win. The question is whether we can win without them. I have studied their history. Alone they are dangerous. Together they can change the course of empires. I say we must stand with them. Slowly, Saris lowered her head. She remembered the burned fleets of her people, the endless retreats, the growing despair. She remembered the human cities she had seen, full of life and determination. At last, she whispered, perhaps hope can be reborn. On the final day, the ambassadors stood before the human council once more. Saris spoke for them all. We came with doubt. We leave with belief. If humanity will lead, we will follow. Marcus Hale looked at each of them, his eyes shining not with pride but with responsibility. Then hear this. We will not promise an easy path. Many will fall before the end. But together we can show the Krith something they have never seen. We can show them that the galaxy still has strength. Brannock raised his voice in a roar. Let them see. Let them learn fear for the first time. And so the gathering of allies began. Word spread faster than the Krith could silence it. Across hidden channels, whispers turned to calls. Broken fleets began to repair their ships. Old rivalries faded as leaders chose unity over pride. For the first time in years, the galaxy spoke not of surrender but of resistance. The Krith did not notice at first. They saw only small movements, scattered voices, weak races gathering around a young species. They laughed at the thought. To them, humans were nothing but sparks against a storm. But sparks, if gathered, could light a fire. And in the heart of the galaxy, a fire was beginning to burn.